All right, thank you everyone for joining us today for Leveraging Marketing and Engagement Technologies for Nonprofits, brought to you by MilkCrate and OBO Agency. Just again, a logistics overview. We're using the chat for introductions as well as questions. There will be plenty of time at the end for Q&A. Noah and I are going to make sure neither of us go over 20 minutes, hopefully, so we'll have about 15 minutes at the end. And as a reminder, we are recording. The agenda is going to be the part we just did, plus 20 minutes by Noah, 20 minutes by myself, and then the Q&A at the end. Just a quick overview about myself. I am the CEO and founder of MilkCrate. We're a 7-year-old mission-driven tech company based in Philadelphia, although at this point we're so dispersed across the world, I don't even think it makes sense to say that anymore. I'm also very involved in the nonprofit world. Aside from my work with MilkCrate, I'm the president of my civic association. I'm on the board of directors for Philly Startup Leaders, as well as the local chapter of Almalinks and the Energy Coordinating Agency. I got my start in the nonprofit world, specifically women's health. And when I'm not almost 8 months pregnant and on quarantine, I am practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for fun. So if anyone out there ever wants to talk to me about that, I would love that. And my contact information is here as well as on the bottom of most of my screens. Take it away, Noah.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I am the co-founder of OBO Agency. So we specialize in revenue operations for our clients. So I'll get into more about that, what that means in a minute here. So I really focus on marketing and technologies, although that kind of encompasses everything from CRMs, marketing automation systems, service technologies, integrations, everything that organization needs from soup to nuts to be able to effectively market and reach out to their constituents. And work a lot with nonprofits, work a lot with associations, and also work with companies who are looking to optimize their revenue operations. So a lot of the cool things that we've done over the years is we've taken what we've learned from companies and applied that to nonprofits as well as associations, since everyone ultimately is trying to increase revenue, whether that's through donations or programs. So you guys can, of course, reach me at noah@oboagency.com. Happy to answer any questions you guys may have post-webinar, as well as answer any questions you guys bring up throughout the chat. And if you want to go to the next slide there. So a little bit about OBO Agency, just so you guys have some more context. There's 24 of us. We're all based in the US. In fact, we're all based out of the Mid-Atlantic. We have 2 offices. We have an office in Columbia, Maryland. We also have an office in Washington, DC, right off of New York Avenue. We work with a lot of different technologies. We're both Salesforce consulting partners as well as HubSpot Diamond advanced implementation partners. We also have a deep expertise in marketing cloud, ActiveCampaign, Dynamics, Marketo, Pardot, you name it, we've probably worked in it. I can tell you what our favorites are and what I generally recommend overall. But of course, that means we really have the deep experience in doing these sort of projects for our clients. So everything from mapping their journeys, mapping their processes, understanding how we want all the integrations to work, all the way through the marketing automation piece. And the company was founded both myself as well as my co-founder, Rob Glenn, who handles operations and technology over here at OBO. And if you want to go to the next one. So I think this is one of the most interesting concepts. And this is really a concept that's kind of taken more from the commercial space, but it applies to nonprofits as much as any organization would. You know, as a nonprofit, when you guys go ahead and you seek out to, let's say, get grants, get donations, whatever the case may be, you know, like any organization, you're going to need to market yourself. And upon marketing yourself, you may pass along to a development director who's going to go ahead and further try and elicit and solicit those donations, and eventually you get a new donor, which is fantastic. And that's generally where it ends. And that's a big problem, considering a lot of issues that occur is the fact that donors, you know, generally the reasons why they don't become repeat donors is they don't ever get reached out to. They don't ever never ask for more money. They don't really know where their money went towards or what services it provided, or they're getting the same messages that someone who gave $1 versus someone who gave $10,000 is getting. So there's no you know, special information and contact and messaging that can go directly to them. And so this is where most organizations fail, is as soon as you get the donation, that person just goes into your contact pile, and you know, nothing's really tracked along the way. You're not tracking to see how are they interacting with your services that the nonprofit may be offering. Maybe they're both a donor as well as a some sort of constituent inside your nonprofit themselves who are getting services from you guys. Marketing may have no idea how much they've been given, or that this person is both an individual who is a recipient of the services as well as a donor themselves. Of course, nonprofits take all sorts of different shapes and sizes, but the idea of a flywheel is that all these pieces work together. Marketing knows exactly what services someone is utilizing, and maybe it's services for their children, and they can now reach out to the parents for donations or to participate in other programs. Or maybe it's a situation whereby the person donated but also could be a great recipient of the services that are being provided by the nonprofit. The idea of the flywheel is to connect all the dots, is to make sure that all different departments inside the organization know what's going on, and then can go ahead and do this outreach to that person with a unique specific message that will be more relevant for them. And so if you can actually move on to the next slide. So what we focus on when we think of the flywheel, really kind of focuses around revenue operations. Revenue operations is the flywheel in the sense that it's development. So that's your kind of your sales side, that's getting your donations, that's the marketing as well as the services that you provide. A lot of organizations are siloed. So their services department is siloed from their marketing versus development. Development has no idea what services have been provided through the nonprofit, and thus can't necessarily coordinate campaigns. Vice versa, services are not aware of who all their best donors are, and it may take them a while to build out lists to be able to target those individuals. So with revenue operations, it's all about using software and technology to kind of pull it all together. And one of the big pieces of revenue operations kind of pulls it all together is your marketing automation piece. And marketing automation is really, think of it as like automating a lot of the workflows and processes that you right now probably spend a lot of time doing, such as building a list to figure out who's donated to you in the past, instead of setting up automated sequences that can that can essentially be sent out to those individuals. So, really it's kind of automating repetitive tasks. It could be list building, social media. It could be postings, social media postings, ad campaigns, segmentations, appointment scheduling, and many other. It could also be identifying who the hot prospects and opportunities are. How many times have they hit your website? How many emails have they opened? And also scheduling. So again, there's a lot of different cool things that marketing automations can do, but revenue ops is really a matter of going ahead and pulling this all together and ensuring that all the teams have the right technology and you guys are working seamlessly together so that you're able to not only efficiently do your work, but also more efficiently reach out to your constituents, whether they're a donor or recipient of your services. And you can move to the next slide for me. So what are kind of common complaints that we hear before implementing revenue operations? And some of this may apply to the people on the phone today. Let's say you have Salesforce. A lot of you may have nonprofit success pack within Salesforce. And Salesforce is really cool because they give you those 10 first, if you're a 501c3 or 501c4, you get 10 licenses for free, and it's about 1/5 of the normal cost. And they also have something called Nonprofit Success Pack. But a lot of times, organizations just really didn't set it up properly, and people can't find anything in it. Oftentimes, we hear that process is broken. You may have 5 different departments within your nonprofit. Each of those departments may have a totally different process. And unfortunately, as that process is broken, they may not be using the systems at all. Instead, they're still working out of their spreadsheets. A lot of times there's zero email strategy, the data's a mess, the leads are bullshit, for lack of a better word, like these aren't real donors. You may have too many tools. There may be too many things that you're currently working with and they're not integrated, or you simply don't know what's working versus what's not working. There's also a lot of enablement tools that your development team can use, such as automated emails, automated scheduling, recording calls, that your team just simply lacks. So it's like your team is having to do a lot more brute force rather than using technology as a force multiplier. Oftentimes we come across where situations are nothing is integrated, it's all siloed. You don't know what one part of the organization is doing versus the other. The reporting is horrible, hit or miss forecasting. You're like, hey, how much are we going to generate in donations this month? And you have no idea who the best donors are. Oftentimes, especially in the nonprofit space, it's really doing those manual tasks. How often have you guys been asked to simply go ahead and build a list of your top donors only to find out it takes you 5 hours to do because you have to go through each and every one of them and wasn't as simple as clicking a few buttons. With revenue operations and having the technology in place, all this becomes more simple. Most importantly, the donor experience themselves. Simply going ahead and remembering to reach out to that donor once a year by having a little sticky note on your computer isn't really a great way of doing it. That message needs to be tailored to that particular donor. It needs to be at the right time and place. You need to have communications with that individual, letting them know where that donation's gone towards, how it's benefited the organization, and give them a reason to donate again. But this is where a lot of organizations kind of fail, is they don't have that good experience because they don't have any of these sequences automated. They don't have any of these journeys thought out. They don't have any of the process around to really kind of provide that top-notch experience to go ahead and build that great relationship with your donors. So these are common complaints. You guys may pick up on one, some, or all of these complaints in terms of how you guys go ahead and operate. And we're going to talk about how technologies can help solve some of these areas. So if you can move next slide for me. So one of the areas I want to talk about is marketing automation. Marketing automation is different than just Constant Contact or MailChimp. Constant Contact and MailChimp are great for sending that one-off email, maybe having a newsletter of some sort, but it's not really about marketing automation itself. And when you think of marketing automation, really what you're kind of thinking of is how do we increase our conversion rates? So delivering that right targeted communication at the right time to a potential donor. Generally, you may have multiple channels, so you want to coordinate that email. You want to coordinate a phone call with your development director. You want to coordinate a direct mail piece sent out. Marketing automation can coordinate that entire workflow for you, so you're not sitting there trying to manually doing it themselves, but now you're able to hit them from multiple channels so they can go ahead and get that donation. Lack of development, marketing, and services alignment. This is what I talked about earlier on, where no one knows really what the other side of the organization is doing. Your development team would love to know exactly who's been interacting the most with the nonprofit, so they have a better understanding who to reach out to, or perhaps who's been visiting the website the most, so they know, hey, maybe this person is showing a lot of interest. But with that lack of alignment, you really can't necessarily get the insights into how you can generate more revenue through donations because you're essentially guessing. So utilizing tools like marketing automation, CRMs are great ways to align the organization. And really these tools are designed to give you guys a visibility to collaborate more effectively and to drive more donations. And really one of the ways that you go ahead and that you're able to kind of start building out what that alignment looks like is through what we call user story requirements. And user story requirements is whereby you're going to go ahead kind of interview the various team members within inside the organization. Of course, my team does this for our clients as well. But to understand what all the requirements are, once you understand all the requirements, then you'll understand what technologies to deploy on behalf of your team. Another big area that marketing automation can help solve is really the inefficiencies. And that goes back to creating those lists. I think that's probably the number one that we see the most, is it takes a really long time to build a list to be able to target your particular audience. And the idea here is that you guys should be spending more time on the activities that help drive the mission of the nonprofit versus simply just doing manual brute force labor. And think of technology like marketing automation as a force multiplier to make you guys more efficient and effective. So with marketing automation, spending less time creating and scheduling emails or various communications to be sent, instead you can kind of think about the bigger ideas and bigger strategies. And finally, it can also really help you guys re-engage, and I know I use the word customers here, think of donors instead. But marketing automation is really kind of developing that deep loyalty and making sure that you guys are sending the right messages at the right time. Sometimes you need to re-engage a donor. Perhaps they haven't been getting your email for one reason or another. And we want to be able to identify that this person used to be really responsive, but no longer responsive now. Perhaps it requires a phone call to reach out to that particular individual to get them more interested in kind of what it is that you guys are doing or what requirements you have now for donations. So really, marketing automation is a great way to solve a lot of problems. And marketing automation, just like CRM, you can automate a lot of the workflows and process, and you can integrate marketing automation directly with the CRM itself. And maybe you can move on to the next slide for me there. So kind of market automation is all about using the softwares to kind of automate your marketing activities. So whether it's posting on social media, whether it's you want to figure out which ads are driving the most donations, whether or not you want to kind of coordinate the appointment scheduling, it's really about kind of putting all this together for you guys so it works well. And it's taking all those manual tasks and automating those tasks in the back end. And if you can move on to the next slide there. So what are the benefits of this? And I'm sure as you guys kind of see from this particular slide, some of the stuff you've been working on, some of the stuff you maybe haven't been working on. But when properly implemented, market automation systems can really drive the increase in donations, both the size as well as the frequency. And it comes down to kind of these few key areas. I'm going to walk through each of them. One, measuring success at your fingertips. So with market automation tools, to be able to measure that success, to be able to get the right information, see what channels are driving the most donations. Prioritizing your best leads. How often have you heard from your development directors, who do we contact? Who do we target? When do we target? Why do we target? Well, you can use such as like lead scoring to identify who's most likely to provide that donation and who will convert. Less repetition, more creativity. You know, if you're sitting there and you're constantly trying to think about when do I need to send out my emails for, let's gain more donations, whatever the case may be, you know, all of a sudden when you have a lot of manual activities, you're not necessarily being as creative because you're struggling to get all the work done right away. I use the word better upsells and cross-sells, and I think this still necessarily applies. And the reason why I use that particular word is because even though you may be requesting donations, there's also other opportunities to get them involved in programs. Maybe you're looking for volunteers, or you're looking for other individuals who can help out in various aspects of the nonprofit. Well, with market automation tools, you can then go ahead and identify who those opportunities may be more quickly and easily by being able to build those lists pretty fast. More effective spend. So some of you may be spending money through Google. Some of you may be spending money through programs like Facebook. And one of the big problems a lot of organizations have is really attribution. So where's that money going? How much money you're spending where? And where you're going to get the most value. And this is critical with inside organizations because your funds are limited. Even if they're granted to you, they're still limited. And you want to know where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And it may not necessarily be to drive donations. Maybe it's to spread word about your particular program. Market automation can help identify who's interacting, what opportunities are generating the most results for you. And also kind of targeting multiple donors or targeting donors across multiple channels. So, you know, we talked about earlier about hitting donors. It could be across social media, it could be across email, it could be across direct mail. There's a lot of different channels that can be hit. And you want to be able to kind of target those various channels. And of course, better list management and segmentation so you guys can automate. This is probably the biggest one, and this is the most time-consuming part. And I think this is where most nonprofits fail, like I mentioned earlier, is they're not necessarily sending the right message at the right time because they don't have any segmentation on their lists and their audiences. So with market automation tools, you can build those lists and audiences in such a way that will make it really easy for you guys to go ahead and do your outreach. So less manual, more automated ways of doing work. I believe that's the last slide I have here, but I did want to talk about a couple of other things as well. One, when it comes to technologies, I encourage all of you guys to check out the Salesforce Nonprofit Success Pack. This program is, you know, generally the word Salesforce and inexpensive does not go hand in hand. But in this particular case, they have a really cool program, like I mentioned earlier, for nonprofits, where you get not only those 10 free seats, but you get heavily discounted pricing on your additional seats within their program. And then they also give you discounted pricing if you were to get market automation tools such as Marketing Cloud or Pardot, which will pass along those savings to you. But Salesforce is not the only one. There's a lot of applications out there in the marketplace. We just generally prefer Salesforce. Within the market automation space, you have a lot of different options as well. You have tools like Marketing Cloud and Pardot, but you also have tools like HubSpot that you can integrate within your CRM or your tools that you guys have. There's ActiveCampaign, there's Marketo, and that's just to name a few. One of the things about the world of technology is there's thousands of them. And before you go ahead and you just start selecting your technology, I really encourage all of you guys to do what we refer to as user requirement gathering. And that's whereby you're going ahead, interviewing the various members of your team, understanding how they're doing work now, understanding how they wish they could be doing work. And those user requirements are going to help dictate exactly what type of technology you want. Once you go through your user requirement phase, at that point, you're then able to move on to your technical scoping. Within technical scoping, based upon those requirements, now you have a better understanding of what system you want to select, as well as what the level of effort is going to be to set up those technologies. Of course, you then go on to implementation. When done correctly, this is a force multiplier for your team. So rather than simply having to go out and hire a whole bunch of people to do a lot of manual activity and work, now you're able to use technology to automate and augment your team. And so your team can focus on the more high-valued creative work versus just the manual tasks themselves. And I think that ends with my slides there, Morgan. So I will let you take back over.
Great, thank you so much. So before I get started, I wanted to just ask, and there's only a couple of you on the call today, but if any of you are running a current program, this is definitely designed for you. This is for people who are guiding a group of people, whether it's volunteers, beneficiaries, or members, through an experience and are perhaps struggling with engagement and progress tracking. So that's really what MilkCrate's all about. So I'm just curious if any of you are in that situation and would love for you to share that in the chat. Feel free to add a link to your program so other people can check it out too. So what I'm going to be going over is how MilkCrate works, some common analog and digital tools you might already be using, some Pew Research data on who has a smartphone and what's the best way to reach people, the difference between custom versus templated development, when an app makes sense, some case studies, and then finally ending with what is the virtuous cycle we're hoping to create with MilkCrate in terms of funding, engagement, and data. Now, the very first thing that probably all of you know is that there are three main types of nonprofit audiences. And it's really important to think about them as distinct groups because they have different roles that they play in your organization. One group is donors and funders, the people that are giving you the money that you need to get work done. Then you have your volunteers who are often doing work for free and that are, potentially going through an experience over a long period of time, much like your members or clients or participants. MilkCrate is really designed and focused on serving these last two groups, whereas, CRM, Salesforce, these other types of tools are much more focused on donors and funders. Now, another thing I want to do is kind of get on the same page about theory of change and these different terms, because these terms are really, really important in the context of running a program and measuring if it's succeeding. And they're terms that we at MilkCrate spend a lot of time talking about and thinking about in how we design our product and help our clients with measuring these things. So the very first one is inputs, and that refers to the different resources you're collecting. Often funding from a funder might be one of them. Activities might be things that the actions of your nonprofit. So things like a group activity to develop peer group support or mentoring. Outputs are things like what is getting done. So how often did those mentors and mentees meet? An outcome would be mentees reported a 50% increase in their ability to, do their job well after a year in the program or something like that. And impact is the ultimate change you intend to create in the world as an organization. So helping more low-income people advance and improve in their career and increase their wealth to reduce wealth inequality or something like that. So just to try and give you some context and examples about what these words mean in case some of them might be new to you, sometimes they get misused or interchanged, and it's really important to kind of get that out there and clear. And we're going to talk about them a little bit more in the context of some MilkCrate case studies in just a bit. Before I do that, I want to just kind of quickly review what is MilkCrate. So MilkCrate is a platform that allows nonprofits to launch white-labeled mobile apps for their volunteers or the people that they serve. It allows you to do this affordably and quickly because everything is templated and you're picking from ready-to-go features instead of having to build an app from scratch. I know that some nonprofits have looked into what would it be like to build an app, and then they call up a custom development shop and they run away screaming because they're told, oh, it's going to be $200,000 in 12 to 16 months, which is basically the opposite of how MilkCrate works. We are much more affordable. We're much faster because instead of building everything from scratch, we've learned what nonprofits need, and we've built those templates so that we can kind of rinse and repeat for each new client we work with. And each app comes paired with an admin dashboard where you, the manager of the program, can administer the content, manage your users, and generate activity reports. And those reports will very much speak to the impact and the outcomes that you're looking to track. The first case study I wanted to just say from the very beginning, because it has a really nice outputs versus outcomes example, is the Committee of 70's We Vote program. The Committee of 70 is an organization that is dedicated to better government and civic engagement. It's nonpartisan. And several years ago, they started a program called We Vote, where employers around the city could sign up to share content and information and activities with their employees so that their employees would be more civically engaged. It was very one-directional in how the program ran. Committee of 70 would send content and updates to the employers. The employers might post it or email it to their employees. And that was basically it. There was no feedback loop showing who was doing what and was it changing behavior. So they hired MilkCrate to launch the We Vote app, where all that content gets distributed to teams that are divided based on the employer. So each employer has their own group in the app, and everything gets tracked in that way. And now we can see the outputs and outcomes that have resulted from working with us. So in the last election cycle, there were 450 instances of voters viewing the voter guide, and that was their output. And then the outcome, which is a change over time, was that app users were 50% more likely to vote after downloading the app at least 1 week before the election. So these are the kind of stats that the Committee of 70 needs to be able to show to their board to say, look, this program that you invested in, it's working. We are reaching our mission. So that's just to kind of give you an example of what MilkCrate is and how it functions. We do work with a lot of different types of nonprofits, not just civic ones or volunteer ones. And I'll show you some other examples later on. But before I do that, I think it's important to kind of talk to where are a lot of nonprofits today. The top line are the analog tools that a lot of you are probably using, and the purple is the digital tools that you're probably using. And pretty much every discovery call we ever have, we hear, oh, well, we're using this for that, and then we've got paper sign-in sheets, and then we have to type it up into an Excel file, and then I have to add that into my Salesforce. And then I have my website where I advertise everything. And it's this very complex and hard to manage and time-consuming collection of tools. And one of the things that we hope to do is help the nonprofits we work with reduce those tools, reduce that effort, and have everything happen a bit more seamlessly. So that, say, instead of having a form on your website for volunteers to sign up with and then having to get in touch with them and then having them fill out a paper sign-in form, you can just say, oh, download this app. That's how you register. And then all your volunteer shifts you also sign up for in this app, and the data instantly shows up on a dashboard. Now, often I hear from nonprofits, well, what's the best way to reach everyone that we serve? What's the silver bullet? And while there isn't one tool, what we have seen is that the majority of Americans, and this is Pew Research Center data, the vast majority of Americans do have a smartphone. And this is across all demographics, age, race, education, income. Other than 65 and older, every demographic has 71% or more using a smartphone. And even the 65 and older, it's the majority. So I often share this in hopes that it provides some excitement and relief around the idea that you can actually reach people through their smartphone more than any other way. To more simply visualize when does it make sense to launch an app, basically if you have met 2 criteria that we kind of vet nonprofits for during our discovery call process is, do you need consistent engagement from the people you're serving, your volunteers or the people you serve? And do you need behavior data? Do you need to be able to track how many hours did they log as a volunteer, or how many webinars did they watch, or how many mentor chat sessions did they participate in? All those kinds of things that can be tracked in a MilkCrate app is behavior data. And if you need the behavior data and that consistent participation and engagement over a long period of time, not just a weekend or a week, but months or years, that's when a mobile app like MilkCrate could really make sense and be worth the investment. If you don't need those things, then it's probably not the right fit. Breaking that down into some more specifics. So if you as an organization have the goal to better engage your program participants and track data, that's a good sign that this could be a fit. If there's a way to deliver more value to the people you're serving, simplifying the process to complete activities, like logging their volunteer hours or finding out about shifts or activities they can complete, making it easier for them to consume content, like with WeVote, and facilitating one- and two-way communication, perhaps like in a mentor-mentee capacity. If your users would benefit from something like that, they're more likely to download it and keep using it, and therefore it'll be successful. Similarly, offering increased value to your staff, having a tool that makes it easier for them to not have to log manually volunteer papers into an Excel sheet, or not having to distribute snail mail and phone calls and Facebook posts trying to reach everyone so that they all know about the event that's coming up. And finally, the value to the funders, having that transparent success data, like I showed you with WeVote, the outputs and the outcomes that the app can measure. Now, this question, what's the difference between a custom app versus a templated app? It's not super important that you understand the nitty-gritty from a technical perspective, but from the client perspective, what we want you to understand is that there are many fewer steps, which therefore means less time and less money when you do a templated app. It also means that you're not going to get to say, let's pretend we're at a restaurant and you see something on the menu and you're like, oh, this salad looks great, but can you put the dressing on the side? Can I have turkey instead of bacon? And can I have romaine instead of arugula? Like that would be a custom salad, right? Versus a templated salad, which is like, we've polled all the people who fit your demographic and we know that you're gonna like this salad. It's a tenth of what it would cost for you to tell us exactly what you want. Here's your salad, have a great day. That's more how templated works. However, there is some more flexibility than that with MilkCrate. We do allow for things like having your own brand in the app, changing the look and feel, but the features themselves, how they function, the events calendar, all of that's already built. If you need something in addition to that, then you can ask for that and pay for that. But the core of it and the bulk of the experience is going to be ready to go so that you can launch in a few weeks or months instead of years. And this slide basically just says everything I just said. Making it more affordable, having the right features for nonprofits' needs, and launching in weeks or months instead of years. So to give you some more examples of what these features look like, I already referenced like the events calendar, where you can have volunteer shifts or you can have upcoming events for your organization that people can sign up for, hold a spot for, register, etc. Push notifications, which are an incredibly powerful tool to be able to reach people. Being able to let people know. Sounds like someone just got a push notification. I heard that come through. Being able to see, something's coming up and my administrator's trying to reach me, and now I can open it up right in the app. Another powerful thing about apps is being able to have a map where there are specific locations you want people to go to. And when they go and check in, the phone will verify through GPS that they were actually there. So we've had programs where it's teens going to museums and you want to know if they're going, they check in at the museum. We're going to be launching an app where volunteers are going to different farms and they're checking in at the farm, proving that they picked up the food and brought it in for distribution. Polls and surveys, instead of having to have a separate SurveyMonkey account where once a year you ask people to fill out a 10-minute survey, instead, you could have a poll question on the homepage of your app where every week you're collecting information. Segmenting your users into different groups. I again referenced that in the WeVote example where different employers had different teams. You can also do this where a volunteer group in one state gets different content than a volunteer group in another state. Or if you have members and chapters, you can segment your users accordingly. The way it would look for your program participants is they would download an app, create a profile, join their segment or team, and then they just start earning points by answering those poll questions, signing up for those events, logging volunteer hours, chatting, consuming content. And we're even making it now so that you can set goals for people and have them level up over a period of time as well. Your admin dashboard where you can see your data and who's doing what when. And I wanted to share this in the context of what's going on in the world right now with COVID. One of our clients, Inner City Capital Connections, runs a cohort program for entrepreneurs in 8 cities across the country, where entrepreneurs are in a 6-month program to improve as business owners. And it had always been a hybrid online and in-person program. And now they're fully online. And so they were really relieved that they already had a digital engagement platform in place. But that doesn't mean that you are screwed if you didn't already have something in place. You can always build something now. And I'm going to jump ahead to this example, Jersey Cares, where this nonprofit didn't have anything in place when COVID hit. And they're like, oh my goodness, we need to help our seniors get groceries, and we need to help facilitate the volunteers doing it. We know nothing about apps or technology. Please help us. And so in a matter of 3 weeks, we got an app launched where volunteers can sign up for shifts, where different seniors' grocery orders are listed. The volunteers claim the one that they're going to do. They take a picture of the food delivered and the receipt, and everything gets tracked, and it's super easy and super successful. I'll show you this one other volunteer example. This is the Reading Captains app for the Free Libraries Read by Fourth initiative. And in this case, volunteers used to have to carry around a 4-inch binder of all the materials they needed to share with families as they met with them about their children and their reading progress and how to help their kids get on grade reading level. They also had a lot of forms in there they needed to fill out, and it was a really time-involved process to sort through all those materials, let alone tracking what was shared with which families. Now all of the materials are in the palm of the hand of the reading captain, and they can very easily reference the right materials and track how the family was receptive to them and any feedback that they may have gotten, so that all that can be captured by the staff and see how the program's going. One last example, this is a youth volunteer corps app. We've actually built 2 of these now for 2 different chapters. And it's kind of it's what it sounds like. It's teens doing volunteer work. But before COVID, the teens used to go into hospitals and schools and do work that way. Now they can't do any of that. And so instead, they pivoted the program to be more about digital service opportunities. So the teens are able to sign up for things like writing e-cards to patients that are in recovery, or doing an audit of the plastic in their home instead of being able to go and do a street cleanup. So they found a way to pivot the program using the technology that they created with us. At the end of the day, MilkCrate's mission is to create a virtuous cycle of funding, engagement, and data, so that the funders that are helping fuel your programs can get the data that they need to show that it's working. So you guys can launch an app for your users that generates the data that proves you're achieving the goal that you set out to create and the change that you set out to create in the world. So that's our mission, is basically to support your mission. We are at 1:43, so I finished 2 minutes early. Very proud of myself. We now have time for questions, and I'm also going to share in the chat a link to this survey that we've created. We would absolutely love your feedback. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing that with us, we'd really like to get your feedback about today. So with that, I've stopped presenting. I'm going to also stop recording.